There's been loads of podcasts and reports and even TV programs recently about the horrors of having dyslexia and the upset and stress that this causes to students and their families. And we're going to do something different today. We're going to talk about the solutions. And I'm delighted to welcome Olive Hickmott to the discussion. She has 25 years of experience of coaching dyslexic students. And Olive, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, I've been doing this for 25 years, which makes me feel extremely old. I would have been dyslexic if anybody tried assessing me when I was younger, but I'm too old because we didn't have assessments of dyslexia in my day, and my symptoms were just poor spelling, dreadful spelling actually, and really slow reading. And my reading was so bad that I would say after reading 2 pages of anything, even up until the age of about 40, that I would go to sleep. And when I was 16, my head teacher wrote on my school report, it would be useful if Olive could learn to spell. Well, I had been in the same school since I was 4, and so whatever they'd done didn't work. But then I found out something else.
What did you find out?
I found out in a 10-minute demonstration when I was doing my NLP, that's neuro linguistic programming qualification. When I was doing that, they literally did a demonstration on the stage with 6 or 7 people and asked them to spell difficult words. And the people who were struggling to spell looked down and struggled to spell. The people who could spell, and they weren't terribly difficult words, that things like giraffe, they looked up and saw the word and spelt it. And I immediately the next day, walked into my special needs school where I knew the deputy head teacher and said, can I work with some of your poor spellers? Have you got any? I said very naively, and he went, we've got hundreds. Which ones would you like? And that was where it all started.
Wow. And I met you, I think, about 2 years ago. And the same experience for me with reading, that I didn't not understand how people enjoyed reading books. I'd have to read the paragraph, the sentence numerous times before it even went in, and it would completely exhaust me and put me to sleep. And thankfully, having met you and you teaching me some of your wonderful techniques, I can now consume books and actually remember what I've read. So I'm very grateful to Olive for teaching me and my daughters. Not You've not had my son yet, actually, but you've made massive progress with their learning journey in terms of learning and studying for exams and lots of different things. So firstly, I just really would like to thank you, Olive, for making a big difference in mine and my family's lives and the numerous people that you do work with.
I'd like to say it's a pleasure because, especially with your children, I think I saw them for one session,
Yes.
and
Oh,
they completely changed. And then
yeah.
they worked out all sorts of other things that I didn't even know that were possible. And so I always learn from the students. And I'm
Yes.
very grateful to all the students I've met over the years.
Yeah, and I think what you did for me as a parent was give me the courage to allow my children to develop in the way that they're wanting to develop. So one of them absolutely loves to draw, and recognizing that that's just a really good part of her being able to do all the magnificent stuff that she does, but as of the downtime, being able to explore and not draw just in the way that the teacher says that you must do, but actually experiment. And it's the freedom that the kids have got because I'm not as rigid with them in that system. So, yes, honestly, you have made a big difference to not just me, but I know a lot of the other people. So, I'm really
Thank
delighted
you.
that we're going to have this conversation today. So, When you were talking, when you have spoken to me in the past, you've mentioned that it's important to start with the strengths. And I remember when you went on with my daughter, the very first thing you asked her was, what do you love doing? And what's important about that, Olive?
Well, it was something that I always did quite naturally, even when I met the first client, as it were. And when I was, I mean, when I was doing some work with the kids children in special needs school, the first thing I did was to ask them what they were good at. And there was one lad I remember who I didn't need to ask him what he was good at because he was walking around the building with a folder under his arm and it had got a picture of his favourite footballer on the front of the book. And so I thought, he knows about football, this lad. So I gently turned over the folder that was on the desk and I said, can you tell me what your footballer is wearing? And he looks into the distance and he's looking like this and he's wearing glasses, by the way. And I'm going, what are you looking at? He said, I have no idea. So I said to him, I looked at his eyes and I went, he's focusing about 2 football pitches away. And I went, right, I think it might be a bit far for you. Could you bring it a bit nearer? And he suddenly goes, whoops, okay, I've got it now. It's on the window. And he then told me exactly what the football player was wearing. So he was really good at visualizing, but he'd managed to move his pictures so far away, he couldn't see them. And I've talked to him about a few other things that he was enjoyed doing. And it was quite clear that he did everything with pictures. And now he got pictures a bit nearer him, he could do everything more successfully with pictures. And so that's one reason. Another reason, it always cheers up the kids when you talk to them about what they're good at. It's really important, I think, in life to know what you're good at and to know why you're good at it. And then what we do is we go, well, if you can do that, can you build on it and do this? So if they've already got good pictures, can they do pictures with words on? And my experience is, let me give you the example. You picture a cat, for example, and then you imagine cat written along the side of it. And so you see the animal with the word written on it. So you're building on something you can already do. I think everybody on the planet probably knows what a cat looks like. And so putting the word cat on the side of it is really easy for them. And I frequently get parents looking at me as in aghast and go, why are you talking to them about what they can do? Because I brought the child here for what they can't do. I go, let's find out what they can do, and then we'll work out how to use that for what they can't do.
Yeah, and the spelling stuff was with my youngest was the first place that I really saw you in action. I'd heard and I'd read your book and that was fantastic. But seeing you in action with her was just incredible because we got to about 3 weeks before her year 6 SAT exams, and where she had allegedly been able to pass the spelling test throughout the whole of her school career, which I think she just learnt them in the morning, managed to remember them, and then went out of her head. She got to the year 6 and the teacher was like, she can't spell for toffee. Like we can't, I don't know how we've missed this. And she would say to me when you'd ask her a question, she'd go, but I can't see it. And I'm like, what were you talking about? And then that was where you came in because she had 3 weeks to try and get all these words that didn't have rules. So we're not phonetically sounding, you couldn't phonetically sound them out. So she knew all the words that had rules and you could sound out. However, anything other, just a blank. And it was distressing her. And in 3 weeks, you managed to teach us in that one session how to get it into her head. And she got 120 out of 120 on that test. So can you tell me how you did that?
That's the difference. I mean, I have 2 very common statements that's made to me. One is from the child who says, I can visualize words. I didn't know I was meant to be doing that. It's like total surprise. And the other one is from the parents who've been struggling with this for ages, and they go, that makes so much sense. Why didn't somebody tell me? And I go, well, sorry, we haven't specifically got it in the national curriculum. We want children to be able to recognize words, that's the way we recognize words, by holding pictures of the word in our head. We want them to be able to recognize words. We measure them for recognizing words, but we don't teach them how to do it if they haven't done it naturally. And it's like anything else. If you haven't done it naturally, you need a bit of a trigger to help you do it the way that successful people do it. It's just modeling.
The way that's good for your brain too.
Yep, a way that's good. And these kids that we work with have always got very good visual pictures. They just haven't thought of using them for words, possibly because they're so busy with pictures in their heads that they haven't even thought of it.
Yes, and videos in their heads from my experience now of working with many children. Yep. So can you share with us, Olive, so we usually call it visual thinking. What actually is visual thinking?
It's the pictures you have in your head. So let me talk to the audience. So if I ask you to picture a cat, have you got a cat? How big is your cat? Or how small is your cat? We had a child the other day who was a small child, about this 3 foot high, and they had pictures of cats which were 6 foot high. That was terrifying. So we helped them get them to being a smaller size so they could cope with them. But it's a question, if these are all pictures you have in your head, and you've got two types. You've got the ones of things you've seen before and the ones of things that you've got in your imagination. So it doesn't matter which ones they are, but you need to get them under control and comfortable for you. I always say to people, it's like making friends with your mental images. So if you want still pictures, you want to be able to create still pictures. If you want a movie, you want to be able to create a movie. So we start off with just getting still pictures, and then we start to use them for all sorts of things, including literacy.
Yeah, and it's important as well that they are able to make them still so that they don't go out of their mind quickly. Because a lot of the students that I work with that are diagnosed with dyslexia or undiagnosed as well, they can picture it for a time and then it's gone. And it's about being able to bring that back and slow that down if it is videos. Can you tell us about the story of the girl with the blue curtain?
The blue curtain. Yes, I went into a school locally and I was working with this girl and I said, can you picture a cat like I do all the time? Yeah. And she said, yes. And I said, where is it? And she said, over there in the cupboard behind the blue curtain. And I went, okay, is that, or can you see it there? And she went, no, not very well. And so I said, would you mind if I go and get the cat? And so I'm very good at jumping into people's pictures with them. So I assumed I could see the cat as well. So that's what the child would have thought, I could see it. So I went over and pulled the curtain across and picked up an imaginary cat, brought it round to in front of her. And I said, how's that now? And she went, that's much better. Thank you very much. So if you can jump into children's, and when children are really little, if you can jump into their pictures with them and help them get them organized so that they can actually see them, so that they're not confused by too many of them, or whether they are, there's another technique for the child who's got too many pictures. I asked one child one day, can you picture a cat? And she went, her knuckles went white on the side of the chair. And she said, yes, I've got 100 cats and they're all fighting. And I went, that's not very comfortable. She said, no, it's absolutely terrible. And so I said to her, well, some of the cats probably want to go out in the garden. Just imagine you can open the back door and let them go out in the garden. And then I said, some of them probably are hungry. So give them an imaginary bowl of food and then an imaginary drink. And 10 minutes later, she got one cat who was sitting still on a cushion. Now, if you imagine what it's like for a child who is only like 6 or 7, when she imagines cats and she's got 100 cats and they're all fighting, can you imagine what that's doing to her nervous system? She is terrified all day long anytime anybody mentions a generic word like that. I mean, there's loads of generic words like dogs and cats and shoes, and she's deluged in all this information. It's terrifying. So all you're doing is helping them get their mental images under control and comfortable for them.
Yeah, and this is, I know you've done some work on autism as well, that this is what you believe is happening to autistic children in terms of the overwhelm, that they just have too many pictures and they're potentially switching them off.
Yes, I mean, all of the kids who are neurodivergent, nearly all of them that I've ever met have got lots and lots of pictures. Some of them are, and some of them are comfortable with them. Some of them are very uncomfortable with what they're seeing. But they don't know, when you're a little child, you don't know to say to your parents, I am deluging in pictures. Please help. You know, they think that's normal. And,
Yes.
you know, if you said tigers to somebody, I dread to think what that little girl would have done. She'd have been absolutely terrified. We had an autistic child recently who, when you said, can you picture a cat? She would get up, walk to the corner of the room, come back, sit down and tell you what the cat looked like. Then she was asked what was a dog look, what was her, could she picture a dog? So she did exactly the same thing, went to the corner of the room and came back. And the lady who was working with us, who was one of the empowering learning practitioners, said, thank you very much for those 2 pictures, very nice cats and dogs, but why do you keep walking to the corner of the room? And she said, oh, that's easy. I keep all my pictures in the corner of the room because if I keep them all with me, I'm drowning in them.
Wow.
And she'd worked that out for herself. We didn't teach her that.
Yes.
And so that was how she was running her life, which it's a great strategy for being overwhelmed, but it's also a bit limiting when you've got to go and check in the corner of the room for every picture. And so we taught her what we do all the time with kids who have got their mental images out of control. We teach them how to get grounded. And we do classes on how to breathe gently in and out through your nose, right down into your belly, and to get grounded so you feel really connected to the planet. And if anybody's done Pilates or yoga, they'll know about grounding. If not, then we can come back and do another blog on getting grounded.
Yeah, that probably will be useful at some point as well.
And the other thing is that if the parent or the practitioner is grounded, then the child is more likely to be grounded because it's extremely catchy being ungrounded.
Yeah, and that's when all the images and words and everything go out of their heads.
And don't forget, it's a really good skill because if you're going to be creative, curious, problem solver when you grow up, which is what we really need people to do in this day and age, to be creative, then they need lots of pictures. We don't want to get rid of them. We just want to help them get them under control.
Yeah. And there's something with the eyes as well, Olive, that we've not quite mentioned yet. But what's happening with the eyes? I've been watching your eyes today as you've been talking. So what's the connection with the eyes that's important to, as a parent or as a teacher to understand?
This is really important. And it was something I learned in NLP on probably day 1. When your eyes look up, you don't need your head looked up. You just want your eyes looking up. When you look up, you're in your pictures. When you go sideways, you're in auditory. So it's listening or speaking. And when you go down, which is the most important thing, you're in your emotions. So if you've got a child who is frequently upset about what they're doing, their spelling, literacy, concentration, anything else, you'll find they're looking down. If you can stop them looking down and just get them to look up for a bit, they will be much better. I remember one child who came in and was right down here and was telling me about all this awful thing that happened at school. And I just went, just sit back in the chair for a minute, look up to where the ceiling and the wall join, and carry on telling me the story. I didn't tell them to stop the story. And they go, well, they carried on telling me how awful it was. And after about 30 seconds, they went, excuse me, why isn't it as bad up there as it was down here? So you can help people get out of emotional tangles by just looking up. You don't need to do anything more complicated.
Yeah, and when I was working with my son, helping him revise a few weeks ago for his GCSE mocks, I was just amazed at watching his eyes. So he'd done all these revision cards that he had committed to memory. And he just was looking, I'd ask him a question and he'd literally rhyme off the whole card. And I'm always curious. And I say, what was happening? He was, I'm just looking at the words on the card. And he knows that he does that himself, despite having not worked with you. And it was just amazing to watch his eyes. And then the topic that he got stuck on, he hadn't got that linkage, and head down, eyes down. And that's actually one of the tips, isn't it, for reading a book, that you put the book up.
Whatever you're doing, if you've got emotions about doing it, please don't look down. Whether you're writing, reading, or anything, just try and look up. And if we think about it, you know, it's as an adult, how are you reading a book? You're normally sitting in a chair with a book propped up. You're not looking flat down on the table.
On the desk, yeah.
Or alternatively, if you've got a big newspaper, you're up here somewhere.
I spoke to one teacher a few weeks ago, and she said, when I shared that with her, she said, so if I get this child to just sit on a beanbag, which is what she wants to do constantly, it's like, yeah, just let her do what she wants to do. If it means reading a book, rather than, like you say, being face down and you're anxious about reading the words out loud to this class or whatever it is, get them to be relaxed. When they're relaxed in their nervous system, then most of these things can be done quite easily. I've also worked with students that have said, I can't read that, I'm dyslexic, and would get me to read out the sentence of whatever we were doing. And over the course of the session, I would encourage them to read the next word or the next sentence. And by the end, they'd be reading completely fluently because they were calm and grounded in their nervous system. Take them and put them back in the classroom, not able to read because everything's moving around. So it is really, really interesting how their environment and their ability to ground really does affect their ability to learn and process information.
Yeah, and if you've got a child who's got Erlen syndrome, where letters are moving all over the page, then you absolutely fine the diagnosis of that. But please just try with them reading a book, looking up at it rather than looking down. It will change their experience.
Yeah. And a book that they're interested in.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. One of the best things that I think he was in year 2, teacher did for my son when he refused pretty much point blank to read any of the library books was he said, just get him to read anything, like a comic book, anything he's interested in. And he did. He read the things I think it was something about the wonders of the world or something that he was interested in. And he consumed them, and he just turned into a complete and utter bookworm with the help of David Williams. And it has massively helped him in his English journey. But if it hadn't have been for that teacher allowing him to go off-piste, because everyone was supposed to read a reading book and, you know, comment on that and then go on to the next thing, I don't think he would have been the reader that he is today, or being able to process in the way that he does today.
I was really embarrassed when my child was in primary school and he had the little book thing that came home with his reading book. It was so bad. He would read sort of one paragraph if I was lucky. And I didn't do any of this work then, I should point out, because he's a lot older now. And I was really embarrassed. And quite suddenly, overnight, he got it. And he got the ability to read fluently, which is actually what I teach people now. But he managed to, lots of kids will develop it themselves when they're interested in something. And he's gone on and done a PhD in American history. So he reads loads and loads of stuff now. He's got much better English than I have. But when he was 6 years old, he was a complete nightmare and he wouldn't go near reading. So there's hope for anybody.
Yes, of course. And with that said, then, so what has all this got to do with literacy? So we're talking about their eyes, rounding,
Yeah, there
focusing
is.
on their strengths. What's it got to do with literacy? Why does it work?
Well, let me just say, most people know that teachers will talk about word recognition. We don't
Yeah.
think your child is recognizing words. Word recognition happens because we have a place in our brain called the visual word form area, jokingly enough, where we put pictures of words. And we come onto the planet without any pictures of words in our visual word form area. And we need to create them during our life, and preferably as young as possible. And we just need to start. It's called the posh word for it is called orthographic mapping, by the way. But what you do is you orthographically, as in seeing it, map a word into the word form area. So I just use the word form area for short because it's a bit shorter. And so we start off, and we now know exactly how to populate the visual word form area the easiest way. And the easiest way is you start with nouns. Nouns are object words. So you start with CVC words like cat, dog, owl, all of those really, mum and dad, for example, really short words that people will actually know. And they're also the words that they're the first words they tend to speak when they learn to speak. Mum and dad is normally first. And so it's an easy migration to go from mum and dad as a spoken word into mum and dad as a in their visual word form area. So they will start to be able to recognize mum and dad. And we teach all the time, we teach nouns first, which is not the same as the national curriculum, by the way. The national curriculum wants us to do high frequency words, but doesn't help the neuroscience of what's going on in your brain. It is much, much better to teach noun words first. And in point of fact, when we're working with a student, we will teach noun words all the way up to elephant, rather before we move on to non-noun words, because what you're doing is priming your word form area to start visualizing words, and then you'll be able to recognize words. And one of the fun things I do with kids who can't read a book is that I teach them one word, and then I get them to read the book, find that word throughout the book. And scaredy squirrel is one of my favorites because it's a long word. So I teach them, this is what the word squirrel looks like. Now, find in this book all the squirrels. And on almost every page, scaredy squirrel has got the squirrel word written. And I've had kids who cannot read at all in year, let me see, 6, for example, do scaredy squirrel with me. And halfway through the book, they're having so much fun and they're so relaxed that they start reading the whole book. Absolutely astounding. I couldn't believe it when a child did that to me. And he couldn't, I started off with him, I can't read a book, can't do that. And we just did this fun game looking for a squirrel. And then he started reading the rest of the words. And it's all about relaxation, moving the book up, not getting them in their emotions, getting them having fun. And so that's how we do it. So that's why mental imagery is so attached to literacy, and we need it for everything.
Yeah.
Let me just back up a minute. We need it in order to do word recognition. We need it let me just do handwriting for a minute. How do we know what an A looks like? There is nothing phonetically that helps us know what an A looks like. But if we've got the letter A in our word form area, we will know what it looks like, and we can write it down on a piece of paper. So you need the word form area for letters. You need it for whole words. You need your ability to memorize anything that you're reading for comprehension, so that you can, if you can read a sentence and convert that into a picture. For example, I'll give you all a little test here. Right, the elephant was, it was a really sunny day, and he wanted to have he was feeling really hot. So he went up this hill, he went zooming down the other side of the hill, he jumped in the river and started chucking water around and soaking his friends. And you've now got that in as a picture in your head. That's how you improve your memory.
Yes.
And when we read to children in primary school, when they're all sitting on the carpet, hopefully grounded, they're sitting on the carpet and they're listening to a story, add one sentence to the beginning of that story, which is, while I'm reading the story, you make up pictures in your head. And then at the end, you can get the kids talking to each other about the pictures they've got in their head. And this is their imagination. There is no right answers. No right answers at all. Don't correct them. Let them use their imagination. This is an invaluable skill for life.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for the children to know that there's no right or wrong in that. I know that I've done it with a group of like 15 children and asked, for them all to sort of describe their elephant in their head. And no two elephants are the same. They're completely different. And that's what's fun about it, the fact that we all have these different experiences in our mind. What happens then through the education system? Because there are some people that have lost their pictures in their heads through the system. What's happening there?
I think it's what it appears to be, and I have talked to one of the experts in aphantasia, which is the word given to people who have no pictures, and I think it's trauma of one description or another. I personally had very vivid pictures when I was very young. I can still remember them now, and I remember being terrified of them. And then I lost my pictures until I did NLP. And there's a lot about visualizing things in neurolinguistic programming. And I started to get them back again. But I had completely blocked them out. And that was why I couldn't do literacy when I was a kid, because I'd never learned to use the word form area because I'd had such poor pictures. And so it's absolutely vital that we keep our pictures. And if somebody has something that's really upsetting them, they may lose their pictures. But on the other hand, we can teach them how to lose just that picture, not all their pictures.
Yeah.
So, for example, I do something. If a child says, I've got horrible pictures, I don't like them. Well, firstly, for example, the child the other day who had 6-foot high cats, which were really scary, we just got them to move them back a bit so that it's like putting them through the telescope and they were now proper sized cats. Alternatively, I sometimes say to children, think of the fastest animal you can think of. Put a backpack on the fastest animal. Now put all your scary pictures in the backpack. Send him off to the other side of the moon. Get him to drop all the scary pictures there. Get him to fill up with confidence. Come back and drop it over your head. And normally the child starts grinning at this point, and they've got rid of them. So what you can do is you use their imagination for helping them get rid of their scary pictures. So it's not me, I'm not getting rid of their scary pictures, I'm teaching them how to get rid of their own scary pictures. How to manage them.
Yeah. And in the school system, their mental visual thinking skills are not always celebrated or appreciated in the current system. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, although we expect children to be able to remember stories, to do word recognition, to all sorts of things like that, to be able to do mental arithmetic, for example, we don't teach them how to do it. And it literally is a how to. And the reason why we don't teach them is quite bizarre, I think, is that we've just never had the committed training for teachers to actually explain this to them. And of course, don't forget, some teachers will be doing this naturally. Well, if they're good at literacy, they'll be doing it naturally. And if you ask them, they'll go, isn't everybody doing this? And you go, no, they're not all doing this. And then you've got teachers who are struggling with literacy themselves, and they've never thought of doing it. So you've got, whenever I address an audience, I've nearly always got 50-50 going on here. I've got the people who are really good at literacy, who have no idea that other people aren't visualizing words.
Yeah.
And you normally have to nudge them in, they're normally so good at literacy, you have to nudge them into conscious awareness to realize they look up and see words.
Yeah.
And you've got the other 50% who've never visualized a word in their life and are not good at literacy, but maybe get along okay or something like that. And they can be taught. I mean, we teach people in an hour. The only problem is they have to go away and practice, because all their lives they've not been doing this. So an hour is how I teach people how to do it. And I run free webinars which people can come on, which learn in an hour how to do it. But the question is, will they go away and practice it for themselves or for their children?
And for me as well, this has really helped with my memory, being taught the way that you have, because it allows me to be able to now be present with that attention, take a snapshot of something that I'm wanting to remember, and then I can refer back to it. So I'm no longer sort of going out of the house going, oh, shit, did I turn that off? Did I turn this off? Because now I know how to install it into my memory.
Yeah.
In that way. So what is it in the school system then that is, I want to say, letting a percentage of the children down? There are these, I know that you use the term creative geniuses. So tell us about what happens to these creative geniuses as they all start off at.
Let me back up a bit, that we're all born visual learners or visual thinkers, because what's the first thing we have to do is to find mum in order to feed. And so we are all got pictures in our heads when we are tiny. And for example, if mum wears a pink curly wig, who doesn't normally have pink curly hair, they may well cry because that's not what they expect. I mean, there's also smell, and there's sound, and there's feelings and stuff. But the picture one, by the time they're 6 weeks old, they have got pictures of mum. And anybody who's listening to this will remember their kids. If mum's dressed up as something or gone out on a posh event or something, they've gone, who the devil's that? I mean, I do have one friend who really hated her mother doing amateur dramatics and going to see her, because that wasn't my mum on the stage. She didn't like it. So we've all got these pictures that we're born with. So there's been research that says all 4-year-olds are creative geniuses. And if you watch a child with a new toy working out how to make it work, you'll probably realize you've got a creative genius as well.
And they're problem solving as they go as well.
Yep, exactly. The only problem is, as they go through school, school is an auditory sequential playground. We don't do a lot of visual stuff as they go through school. And unfortunately, because of budget cuts and stuff like that, we have less and less creative, imaginative stuff that goes on. And it can be all sorts of creative and imaginative stuff. And in particular, in the early years, there is a lot of initiatives at the moment to make sure children are playing, because there's so much research about the importance of play in their development. And so we're now looking at how we can use all the information that we've learned about teaching people who are struggling with neurodiversity later on in life, how we can ensure that young children in early years develop the right skills to be able to use their visual skills rather than lose them. So we're scaffolding. I love the word scaffolding. We are saying, what can they do already? And what we know they can do already when they're little is to recognize mum and dad. They can recognize a cat and a dog. They can, if you show them pictures of a house, they'll probably recognize it's a house. So we're going all the way up from 0 up to 6 years old at the end of early years and going, all the skills that they've already got, how can we help them prepare for literacy later? And we can help them prepare for literacy later by showing them a picture of a cat with cat written on it.
Yeah.
Not,
but not under it.
Not under it, not on the other
On
side
it.
of the card, but we can, because if you've got cat written across it, every time you think of a cat, you will see the letters CAT.
Word.
And it's really important to do that. And again, we're not testing the kids. We're just saying, when you're playing, I mean, I was watching a video today, which was a child playing in a sandpit, and he was putting sticks in the sandpit. And then he was picking up some cards with pictures on it, like dogs and cats, with lollipop sticks on, and he was putting those in the sand as well. Now, if we have dog and cat written across that, we are not testing the kids in early years. We're just getting them to associate the word with the object. And so if any of you have got those sort of resources in your early years environments, then do encourage, then do just write words across the middle of them. And then just see whether they start associating words with objects, but don't test them.
Yes, because the testing, what does that do to them?
That produces stress. And then, of course, you're into, if they're stressed, they're not going to learn anyway. What you want to do is keep them in their happy place. And just at some point in time, you will realize, if you watch them, you'll realize they know the words.
Yeah. And what happens to adults? So you were talking about the research of 98% of 4 and 5 year olds are creative geniuses. So what happens as they move into adulthood then?
It's horrifyingly down to 2%.
Wow.
And the research came from a lovely bloke called Dr. George Land and Beth Jarman. Dr. George Land isn't with us anymore, but he's got YouTubes that you'll be able to find. And he worked for NASA at one point, trying to recruit creative geniuses. Now, you can imagine, if you're NASA and you're trying to put rockets up into space, you want creative geniuses on your team. So they recruited some. And then afterwards, him and Beth went, this is really strange. Why have we only got 2% of adults who are creative geniuses? So they went back and did the same tests, age appropriate, with the kids, and then followed them through school. And it's up there on the internet. You can see his research. 98% at 4 years old are creative geniuses. It drops every year until you end up with 2% as adults.
Wow. So what's happening in the education system for that to be happening then, Olive?
It really is just a question of, if you don't use it, you lose it. You know, there's a very old statement like that. But unfortunately, you can have you can stop creativity accidentally very easily. For example, if you're in a class and they're doing art, for example, well, that's an achievement for starters, because we've got lots of people who aren't doing art anymore because they haven't got room in the curriculum. But if you're doing something artistic, or you're putting Lego together or something like that, and the bell goes and you've got to change classes, then that's all going to get destroyed. The Lego's going to get destroyed. And what does that say to the child subconsciously? What you've been doing isn't important. And so you get less and less enthusiasm for importance. But you do meet people who are extremely visual, creative people. I was talking to somebody only this morning who's a graphic designer and has always been creative and imaginative throughout his life. And that's what we want to do, we've got enough problems to solve on the planet. We need these incredible problem solvers.
Yeah. And they're getting lost in the system currently because they're
Yeah.
not learning in the order to sequential way as
And
effectively as their peers.
we haven't taught our teachers. The most important thing is we haven't taught our teachers how to teach visual learners, visual thinkers.
Yeah.
And that's
And
what we've been talking about for the last however many minutes it is.
25, yes.
We've been talking about visual thinkers and
Yeah.
what we
And
want
it's
to do.
not just images on a screen. It is much more than that. It's mental imagery.
It's the
It's
pictures you have in your head.
how you're linking that information for you to be able to retain it.
Yeah.
And that's the missing piece for a lot of these students that are struggling. And the data is horrific because they say about 90% of the students that are excluded or suspended and expelled from school are neurodiverse. So they have these amazing creative genius skills, yet they are not performing in the classroom in the way that the teachers are wanting them to, and therefore are getting excluded when they're
And
not able to.
and you meet lots of his mainly often the historical, but we've got many today as well who have failed in the education
Yes.
system, who may or may not have been diagnosed as ADHD or dyslexic or something like that, and they have jumped into something they're really good at. We all know about Jamie Oliver's, well, most of us know about Jamie Oliver's video for the TV lately, who managed to move into a visual activity that he was really good at. But because he wasn't taught to use his visual skills for words, he struggled with literacy and still does to this day. But when you move across to something that really works for you, Richard Branson's the same.
Yes.
There is loads of people in sport who are really good visual thinkers, but really struggled with what was going on in school. They really struggle with the academic stuff, and they don't need to have done. They can. And another message I'd like to say is that when we teach visual thinkers how to do literacy, they don't lose any of their visual skills.
Yes.
Because it said, you have dyslexic skills. Well, everybody has these amazing visual skills who are visual thinkers, and we don't need to lose any of those skills. In point of fact, when we teach them how to do literacy visually, normally we find their visual skills improve, like yours have, because their brain isn't overwhelmed with the struggle of not being able to do literacy.
Yeah, and there's actual research as well about the left brain and the right brain, and on MRI scans, the parts of the brain that light up. And for people that are diagnosed with dyslexia and are capable readers, they are actually using the right part of their brain in order to be able to read. So that what you're talking about is scaffolding on top of their strengths, and that's what they're doing. They're learning to read via a different pathway to those that typically learn with the left brain mode. And it is just really fascinating to see those brain scans, because what I think Jamie's video had shared was it's actually counterproductive to try and teach a predominantly right-brained person that processes the world with predominantly with their right brain in a left brain way, because it's causing them stress and anxiety, and then they think that they can't do it, and that then affects their self-esteem and confidence. And then you get the incredible amount of students, like hundreds of thousands. I can't remember the exact figures, but it's over 100,000 students that are ghost students. They're school avoiders. They're students that have not gone back to the school system since COVID, since the pandemic, since that gap, that they're not able to just catch back up. And we're letting a lot of students down just because we are not training the teachers. And it's not the teachers' fault. They've got far too much on their plates as it is. But we're not teaching the teachers how to teach or adapt their lessons for neurodiversity or for the neurodiverse population. And actually, this is another thing that came out of Jamie's video, was that if you taught everybody in the classroom as if they were dyslexic or neurodiverse, then all students in the classroom would benefit.
Yeah, look, can I just make a comment about phonics? Because this is really important, because all schools are teaching phonics at the moment. We are not trashing phonics. What we are saying is, if we learn to fill up our word form area before we start doing phonics, we will accelerate phonics. But we need to get the neural pathways working to the word form area first, and that's done through nouns. Nouns. I stop people. I know the national curriculum tells you what words to teach, and I know they tell you to teach high frequency words, but the fastest route is to teach everybody nouns first. Then you can teach them non-nouns.
And
then
you can teach that quickly.
Phonics.
You can teach that quickly, and then they can move on to the stuff, which is what happened with Ellie, my daughter, that you only did a little bit of that. She got it, and then she was able to move on to the other words that didn't have pictures with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really, really fast, and you don't lose. You still need phonics. We need phonics for words that they've never seen before, so they can decode them. But for all the words that they've seen on a regular basis, they will be much, much faster doing it with visually. And so that's the real benefit of doing this, is that you'll be able to accelerate all the stuff they know on, the teachers know on teaching phonics. They will be able to do that much quicker.
And also the detrimental effects of somebody that isn't able to grasp phonics, for them to then just keep doing more and more and more phonics, and the child's still not getting it.
Yeah, I think if you split, all we're doing is slightly changing the order.
Is
if we, because everybody wants to head for word recognition. So what we're doing is teaching word recognition first, so that they can start visualizing words. Then they can use, look at the words in their word form area and notice the phonics.
Yes. Great. So I don't know how long we've been talking for now. I've got a couple of last questions to ask you. So where does all this start? Because in this country, it takes, I think until the child 8 years of age on average to be diagnosed with dyslexia. So what's going on there? Is that too late? Or, what can we be doing in the meantime?
Much too late is the first answer.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, we are now looking at how we teach this in early years, because not as a test, not an assessment or anything like that, but how we can start children associate words with objects, like mum and mum and dad, your objects, they associate saying mum with a picture in their head of mum. Every child that's, I don't know if I said this before, but at 6 weeks old knows what their mum looks like. And so they be able to recognize them. So we know where this starts, and we know that at 6 weeks old they can recognize mum. So the first word to teach them is mum. So that's scaffolding on top of that. But how do you teach that? The easiest way is to have a picture of mum stuck on the wall with mum written on it. You're not asking the child to read the word, but they will sooner or later start associating that word with the picture of mum. We can do that really early on. You could do that a year old, whatever.
A bit like the McDonald's and the Subway sign, that kids would recognize it because they see it.
You're jumping into word recognition, which is exactly what you want for anything. And for example, they will, after a bit, they'll probably know what their name looks like. And so you're not testing them. You've got a picture on the wall of them with their name written underneath it. And so we were talking about the characters in the sand play earlier. So what will happen is that you've got children all doing word recognition before they start doing phonics. and so phonics will be faster, and you're not having, if they're already doing word recognition for reading and they can start using those images they have in their head for spelling, they won't be developing dyslexia. So we need more and more preschools who are going to take on this solution, which is a play-based solution, because at the moment we are working out exactly how this fits into play without parents or teachers telling them what to do or testing them on what they do. So we are encouraging this to start much earlier. And by the time they get to 8, they will be able to do word recognition easily, and they should be moving into phonics as well.
Yeah, and with that, would you like to tell us about the Dyslexia Free School that you that is around in Ireland?
Oh yes, we have a one of our practitioners. I should have said right at the beginning, Laura is one of the empowering learning practitioners. Another one in Ireland is the principal of a primary school, and he has been teaching this for literacy and numeracy for the last, I think it's about 10 years now.
Yeah, it's a
And
full school.
he's now started teaching in teacher training as an elective. So the people who are coming through that teacher training college are learning these skills of how to teach visual thinkers. And I remember he told a story once of a child who in his school who'd been diagnosed dyslexic. And he's a really lovely bloke. And he took this child to a conference with him. And I can't remember just how it went, but he got the child to explain to the audience of teachers what it was like to have had dyslexia, and how he was so confused and what he was doing now. And so the head teacher said to him, "Now, can you tell us, are you still dyslexic?" And he went, "No, I'm not. I can spell and read totally fine." And this was the 8-year-old that decided that it was, he'd cracked it.
And that doesn't mean he doesn't have all those brilliant skills, but they are not now affecting him in the same way that they did.
Exactly.
So the intervention is really, really important, but the intervention much earlier would be more beneficial.
And the reason it's so important much earlier, I mean, I can teach 50-year-olds. I taught myself how to do this. I can teach 50-year-olds, but I don't. But if we teach them earlier, it's much less trauma for them and much less stress and anxiety. I don't want to put people through the stress and anxiety anymore. I want them to learn how to recognize words and then move on to phonics, which they can do, but they won't have to do dyslexia. Dyslexia has become a really strange, I think, a strange diagnosis over the years. I have been doing this for 25 years. When I first started, dyslexia was bright kids who struggle with literacy. Well, I'll go along with that. Very bright kids who really struggle with literacy. Now we have the diagnosis has shifted into bright kids who can't do phonics. Phonics is the education system's definition of how you ought to be able to do spelling and reading. We can teach people to use their word form area, which is what you need for fluent spelling and reading, without using phonics. No shadow of doubt. And so they then become fluent readers of relatively uncomplicated words. But when you want to get them to read something like conscientious, then they're probably going to have to move on to phonics. But they don't need to do phonics for everything. And when you see somebody trying to spell, and this is where I have to be slightly provocative about the English language, when you try and spell words, it's not the easiest language to spell words in.
No.
And phonics is okay to help you, but there is a lot of rules and words that break the rules. And just to mention homophones, those wonderful words that have multiple meanings and multiple spellings, So a homophone, for example, is sure and sure,
Yeah.
SHORE and SURE, completely different meaning and completely different spelling. How are you going to cope with that auditory? Because they sound exactly the same. And if you look up on the internet, there are thousands in the English language of homophones. It's really an unfortunate thing that we have to live with, because we're never going to change that. But we can get around it by knowing, you know, in the minute I think of shore, SHORE, I think of sea. I'm seeing a picture of shore.
Yeah.
And so that's how you learn the different words.
Yeah, and also I know that within I know we're not going into the technique here, but within that, there's ways of you unlearning the wrong thing as well.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, so you can undo some of that stuff. And again, just again, is there a way of a teacher or a parent being able to identify when a child is needing support? So yes, it would be great if we can get this into early years so that it can be developed so that you don't have these issues going forwards. But if they are struggling, like the amazing teacher that had noticed my daughter that wasn't picking up the spelling or spelling the same word 4 different ways in the same paragraph, and missing out letters and different things, it was like, okay, thank you for bringing that to our awareness so that we can do something about it. So what are the things that a teacher or a parent could be looking out for?
I mean, if you get
support?
if you listen to what Laura's just said, if you got a child who's spelling the same word 4 different times in a paragraph, you can guarantee they are not using their word form area.
Yeah, they're sounding it out,
and
trying to.
and quite often you find children who have learned to use their word form area for reading, so they're fluent readers,
Yeah.
but are rubbish spellers.
Yeah.
That's what I did, by the way, because I was a very slow reader, but I was awful at spelling.
So that's
And
another one of the things to look out for.
yep,
So it's not that they don't understand what they're reading, but their processing speed might be slower.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I met a child recently who was on the gifted and talented register. She could consume books,
Yeah.
absolutely, no problem at all. She couldn't spell at all. And I had her sitting in my office. She was local. And I said, can you just read this paragraph to me? And she read the paragraph sentence. And I said, you've just read the word table. Can you now look up and see the word table? You've just read it. So just see the word you've just read. And she went, yeah. And I went, right, now can you spell it? And she spelled it.
Wow.
Half a dozen words later, that she'd all spelt them all correct, she went, so I don't have dyslexia anymore. And I went, well, you've got to do a lot of practicing.
Yes.
But she turned around to me and this is a very, very bright girl. And she said, do you mean to say all the trouble my parents went through, stress and cost of getting me private tutors and everything else, and all the stress I went through, that everything was always wrong in school, that I didn't need to have done that? And I went, yes, I'm sorry, but the teachers didn't know that that you're a visual thinker and that visual thinkers need to be taught this way.
So it's really important for you to watch the child, to notice what's happening to their eyes. And
Yep.
a really great one, I mean, I've done this where even with teachers, and they've gone, I didn't know that's what I was doing. If you ask
Yep.
them to spell a word that's, challenges them a little bit, so it would be age appropriate, and just notice where their eyes go. And are they sounding it out, or are they seeing the word? And those people that might not know that they're doing this, but generally they are the people that can spell are the ones that are visualizing the words.
Yeah, it's called an unconscious competence. It means that you can
Yes.
do this, but you don't realize you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's like breathing is an unconscious competence. If you've got a chest infection, it suddenly becomes very conscious that
Yes.
how on earth am I going to take the next breath?
Yeah.
But normally we don't notice at all. And it's just the same thing. We don't notice that we are recognizing words through this amazing part of our brain called our visual word form area. But when somebody points it out to you, I mean, I've taught many adults in like 10 minutes how to do this. And they've always said to me, I had no idea I was doing this. Absolutely no idea. I even taught somebody who'd been involved in the national curriculum. I also taught somebody who was at one point was the chairman of the BDA. And I remember I taught him at a conference, and in his closing speech in the conference, and he said, and that woman there has just told me I'm using the wrong part of my brain for spelling. And I went, oh dear, shouldn't have said that. But anyway, it's really simple to teach your brain to use the right bit of your brain. So that's the good news.
So you're focusing on what your strengths are. So I think at some point we'll put a slide, or we'll attach a slide about the different routes and the consequences of not doing this either early enough or recognizing it with the children, because I think that might help people understand it a little bit more. And where can people find more information about you, Olive?
Our website is empoweringlearning.co.uk. Please make sure you put .co.uk, because .com is a recruitment consultant, which is nothing to do with me. My email is olive@empoweringlearning.co.uk. And we also have a learning platform where we have all the classes, many of which are free, that you can access to help you understand this experience. And the reason they're free is because I'm actually annoyed that we can't get this easier way of getting this into schools. So my attitude is, these children need to learn this. I can't sit around and wait for years for the government system to change. We need to teach these kids for the future of the planet and the future of the UK. So that the URL for that is visualkids.co.uk. visualkids.co.uk.
Great. And hopefully we'll be able to add some links to that at the bottom of wherever this gets put. Thank you, Olive. That's been really, really useful. And I'm sure has been useful for a lot of the listeners as well. And, you know, we are looking at putting some resources together to support parents and to support teachers. So please do keep an eye on the website. And also they can join your newsletter, can they, via the website?
Yes, on my website you can join the newsletter. Can I say, we really have cracked one-to-one coaching with people. And during August this year, that's 2025, I'm doing a number of lower price one-to-one coaching sessions with people. And we don't have people that come along to help have support that can't do it. We normally find they can do it so easily. It's really amazing. All they've got to do is go away and practice. And so what the bit that we are adding in at the moment, that we are experimenting with, is how to enable the play element to work for really young children. And so anybody who wants to know about that, who is in early years, then please do contact us, because you can contribute to it as well if you've been in early years, because we don't want to have to wait until these children are 8 to identify there's something wrong with them. And then we've got to try and help improve their experience. And that's, we're traumatizing kids.
And it's where the learning differences then become learning difficulties.
Exactly.
And that can be, and again, in the classroom, that can be the behavior. We always say, let's look behind the behavior, but you have a lot of disruption in classrooms when you've got children that are not able to engage because they don't understand what's going on, or they're not able to process in the way that they're supposed to process.
And it's just, I mean, I was looking I read something the other day, and it reminded me that what was left-handedness? Back in the day, my mother was and father were both left-handed. And they used to tell me stories of how they were
Yeah.
broken of being left-handed
Yeah.
because that wasn't the acceptable thing to be. And
Mm.
so we are breaking visual thinkers of being visual thinkers
Yeah.
because that's not the acceptable thing to be. And I'm sorry to close on a bit of a misery story like that, but it's really true. We've got to go, visual thinkers are great. Let's work out how to help them.
And what did the WHO recently release
Yeah,
about what strengths they're needing for the future? And they are, Olive has this thing called the 21st Diverse Thinking Strengths,
yeah,
which again, we can probably put a picture up at some point. And they are all the things that this, as we move forward in the world, in the economy, with AI and everything else, we are going to need these strengths. And we are letting a lot of these down at school currently.
yeah.
Okay.
And just think if we could change the education system so that all the children from whatever all their thinking skills, particularly the visual thinkers, and as we said earlier, they actually everybody comes on the planet as visual thinkers. If
Yes.
we can actually enable them to all learn easily, it would save the country a fortune,
Mm.
it would save the parents a fortune, and we would have far more successful, creative, curious, imaginative problem solvers coming out the other end of the sausage machine.
Yes. And I love the term Olive introduced me to, which was epic. And these epic children, you've got exceptionally perceptive, imaginative, and creative. And
Yeah,
imagine if we thought of the children like that rather than the labels that they're often given.
yeah.
So, with that said, Olive, thank you so much for your time. And until the next time.
Thank you. Bye.